Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, e buonasera, Lazio world. Welcome to our not so instant reaction episode. Consider this your therapy session, maybe, Caleb? I'm your host, Sean McIntosh, joined by my co host and friend, Caleb Adams. Caleb, there's a reason why we're recording late versus our typical instant reaction. It's not because we were in an emotional disarray, but I've got a good story. Here's how my day went, and honestly, happy it happened because it pulled me away from having to watch this one. But it was like the perfect comparison to Lazio's performance today. So great weekend. I'm in San Diego, sunny, beautiful San Diego. My son, we were celebrating our birthday gift. My wife and I gave our son a trip to SeaWorld for his 4th birthday. He's like super into sea animals. So great weekend, 2 days at SeaWorld. We're driving back today. We're on the road early. I'm thinking, okay, might get home in time to watch the second half, but I'll put it on radio, whatever. So we're about 30 minutes into the trip, and all of a sudden, my son is like throwing up. He's vomiting in the back seat, all over himself, all over the car seat, and it was like, all right. So we had to pull over and clean that mess up, and I couldn't think of a better analogy for Lazio's performance today than just throwing up all over themselves for what ended up being a 6-0 defeat. And so I don't know, Caleb. What do you think? You're the one that watched it. How close is that analogy to what you saw?
Honestly, yeah, man. It's just like, when you vomit, you can't really control it. It just comes out of you, and you just kind of have to deal with it. And yeah, it's just everywhere.
It
And that's
was.
kind of what it was today.
Yeah.
We we couldn't stop vomiting. It just kept coming out.
Well, that's what it was. So job done. Here we are. But look, we'll try and talk about this and dissect it. And again, I saw I'm driving. My wife has the game on the phone. It's playing. I'm listening to it. She's holding it up so I can try and sneak a glimpse here and there. And then pretty much second half though, like I was completely out of it. I got to see the turn, but let's jump in. Look, where we kind of always do, and I'll let you ride the bus on or drive the bus on this one. But starting 11 for this Provedel, starting goalkeeper. You've got Nuno Tavares, Gila, Patrick, Marusic as your back line, Genduzi, Rovella, Isaacson on the right wing with Zaccagni manning that left side, Pedro sitting behind Noslin, which you and I talked about as being one of the options going into this one with Tati out, with an informed Pedro, with Noslin riding high. I'm going to just jump right in, Caleb. Give me your 3 words or less to describe this one.
Complete mental collapse. That's what it was. That's what it came down to. Because uh Lazio had a strong start. We looked comfortable. We looked like we were in control. We looked like the how we have looked this season. We didn't look afraid. We didn't look um sort of flabbergasted by the occasion. We were solid. It wasn't super clean. It wasn't super clean from either side, to be fair. But regardless, Lazio for the first 35 minutes looked to be very much going toe to toe with Inter, if not better. We did have a couple chances. Um, and also missed a chance. We had a few other ones. Regardless, it was a good start. It was encouraging at the very least. But as soon as the penalty got called and we conceded that, which it felt like it was against the run of play. So I'm sure the players felt really bad about it because they're like, "Hey, we're in this, like we're doing pretty decent." But as soon as our goal went in, I don't know what happened, but the team just collapsed on itself. I mean, just like like when you're playing Jumba, that's the name of the game, right? Jumba. You take that little piece at the bottom, and the whole thing just comes.
Jenga,
For what?
Jenga.
Bingo, that's what it is. That's what it kinda looked like to me. It really felt that way. It was just like this that little penalty was a little piece we pulled out, and everything just collapsed on itself, and, it didn't help that we've lost our 3 center backs in the past week, 2 of them just in this match. We talk about Romagnoli's importance, but we can go into that later. And that's what it was. Inter weren't particularly great today. They weren't particularly special. But before we came on this pod, the last one we had, remember I said Inter has a different type of mentality compared to Napoli. Like Inter is a different type of unit, different type of team when it comes to this portion. And they were able to see out some of that early pressure that we put on them, and they score that first, never look back. And it just completely they just that team like that can feel when your team has an opening or a weakness, and they'll just stab you right in it. You know what I'm saying? Like if they can feel when you have an open wound, and they'll tear apart that open wound, and that's what Inter did today.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, look, it's two different classes. We talked about this being a litmus test. It's a dose of reality that maybe was served at the right time for us to cool off, temper off any talks, understand kind of where our shortcomings are. But this game is a cruel game, and score lines don't often tell a tale. Erfen on YouTube comments, great friend of the pod, makes a really important point. At the end of the day, it was just 3 points, right? Whether you lose 6
mhm,
0, whether it's a heartbreaking 1-0 loss to Juve, it's 3 points, and you maybe hope that this match, a match like today, gets used as an opportunity to improve versus maybe that Juve one. I know we talk about it all the time. That Juve match this season in particular, right? Felt like we were hard done. Man,
mhm.
kind of unlucky. Had them by the scruff of their necks, despite being down at the man. Hey, we're a better team than Juve, and maybe we were riding a little bit too much with our chests out. And this one was a real punch in the mouth as a reminder of just the things that we need to focus
Mhm.
on. But tell me, Caleb, I want to spend some time on the penalty, but rewinding before that, we had a pretty key moment with Mario Hila exiting this match due to injury.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
do you, which was a bigger key to the match for you? Was it Mario Hila exiting due to injury, or was it the penalty? They're kind
Oh,
of they
penalty
kind of
100.
tie in one in this,
They
but
they're they're tied, but the penalty 100%. And you can say, yeah, the penalty never happens if Hila was in. I mean, you still had 70 more minutes to go in the game. We don't know if you can see the penalty. Point is, if Hila's substitute was somebody like Casale last season, I would have been like 100% Hila coming out. But Gigot has been very solid for us. He's used to these high stake games, coming from Marseille, heated rivalries over there in France. He's been incredibly solid for us. I mean, he hasn't put a bad foot forward. I was perfectly comfortable. I was like, oh, we're like, wow. Instead of Casale, we're putting as you go, which I feel much more comfortable. I still felt good, and I do think the penalty was a bit harsh. And yes, it's a penalty, but I think a lot of our complaints about it is that it's just a lack of consistency across teams, right? This is a penalty that, and the reason why it's harsh is uh, Dumfries goes up to try and win the header. They're both competing for the header. Dumfries gets a little more height on him, uses his arms to kind of get some leverage, right? Kind of pushes into Jigol. Jigol's like flying, out because they both contested the header. He's flying out, his arm goes up, and guess what? It just glances his hand. And my issue there is it doesn't change the trajectory of the shot. It doesn't change the direction it's going to. If it hits the palm of his hand, it just drops straight down. Okay, fair enough. Um, Unfortunately, by the modern game rules, it is a penalty by the book. But it was very harsh to A, that Jigo got it, and then B, to blame him coming in for that collapse. You know what I'm saying? The penalty was just, and this is the frustrating thing I think too, is when you think about games, these really critical, decisive matches you've had, like Fiorentina, Juve, all them, the referee being as big as a factor as it's been has been really frustrating because it's like, man, like these are all games we can look at and be like, if the referee doesn't make that controversial call, which all of them came after VAR, um, is the game different? And that's the frustrating part in a game like this is it's one thing to just collapse because you're getting outplayed by Inter. It's one thing to concede a penalty and against the run of play, and then things just kind of go downhill from there. You give Inter momentum that they weren't really having. Um, so yes, I think just a penalty call was much more impactful than Gila coming up.
Yeah, Milan match as well was another one where the outcome could have been different with a little bit of favor from the officials. And we don't want to be a pod or a fan base that's always complaining again about calls, but when it's when the only consistency is that they seem to be going against you, that's when the frustration comes, particularly when you feel like you have been playing well, and you feel like you're doing your part in a match to hang in there, and not just hang in there. You said it, like felt like that Lazio was the better side for a lot of that first 45, and for it to, man, you want to talk about just unlucky, to get kicked in the face, to like, right, to be pushed and have your
Yeah.
hands out for it to slightly graze your hand, and then you're down at the ground, you're kicked in the face. It's like a save, then an offside, and then okay, here we go. For all that to happen, and then a review take place and it go against, is like, it's disheartening as a fan base. Like I was disheartened. Like that was one of the few moments of the match I got to watch and saw the replay 100 times and was like, dude, what? Come on. Like, what are we doing? Like, go figure. Of course it's going to go against us. What's, I guess what is really frustrating and a little bit shocking was I was frustrated for sure. But this Lazio side under Baroni has always managed to pull themselves up when
Yeah.
things go bad. What did you see today that made this different? So two parts, Caleb, and we've got Bobby Meehan just jumped on, so I'd love to hear his opinion. So the two questions that I've got, like, what did you see in this match that maybe made it different? And then how concerned are you that, or maybe not concerned, that this is just an anomaly, let's move past it, or is this part of something deeper that we need to be concerned about later on? So what about today did you see that made this different?
Well, that's what I said. I tweeted out and I said my disappointment wasn't really conceding the penalty. My disappointment was the reaction to the penalty. You go down, it happens. Especially for Lazio. I knew it was going to get called. I mean, I was, you and I were both shocked it wasn't called a Napoli game because there was an opportunity to call a penalty, even though it wasn't. But it didn't. Um, but it was a reaction to it. We can see that penalty, and then guess what? We can see the second goal. For me, the second goal was a real dagger. After the second goal, I was like, nope, this isn't going to be one of those games where the team bounces back like they have this season under Baroni. And that was a really shocking part. I think the most disappointing part of the match was we've seen sort of these collapses, not to maybe this degree, under Sadi last season, right? Where the team just kind of they conceded first, and it was just, yeah, we're not getting back to this game. It was different under Baroni. It's been different. You don't go on a 14 win out of 17 stretch if you can't battle and have some sort of resilience to get back into games, and we did. And I think I don't. I can't pinpoint it on what it was. I really can't. I do think the lack of Romagnoli played a part in particularly the back line, 'cause let's talk about the back line at some point because they, for me, I mean, just completely shat the bed. Um, but I feel like maybe and we've seen Lotito, we've seen players and people within the organization complain about refereeing and how they always seem to be in the bad end of it. I wonder if this is just a buildup of those frustrations. You have this massive match, it happens, and they're just pissed and I'm deflated. It's like again, right? Here we go again. So I can't pinpoint it what happened because it is very uncharacteristic of this Baroni team. But the response right now is all that really matters because I mean this is a tough one to take.
Are you concerned moving forward, Bobby?
Not super. I think that, you think back to when you were playing, there's just some days that you like, you would rather take a loss like this as opposed to like, 0-0 into the 89th minute and then last minute dagger stupid goal to give up or something ridiculous like the China goal. I can never pronounce that guy's last name, but the third goal was just ridiculous. And if he hits something like that, and that's the only goal that happens throughout after like a super defensively solid performance, that's a lot harder to take. This is one where it's just like you bury the tape. We didn't have a striker today, like to be able to play forward, and then having to substitute two center backs by halftime or before the end of the second half. Like it's hard to do, and there's a reason that those guys have been challenging for the Scudetto and winning them multiple over the last 3-4 years. I don't think that anybody would argue that on paper that's the strongest side in Serie A over the last like 3-4 seasons. So like the reality of the situation is that like they're a lot farther along in their project. They have significantly better players than what we have. Simone Inzaghi obviously is a very good manager, and Baroni is proven to well exceed all of our expectations. Mine certainly from when we were thinking beginning of the season. For this, I think you just kind of bury the tape and move on, and you kind of roll back. The biggest thing is the lack of having a striker today, and then the lack of having the opportunity, like, especially with that. Like you look at Nozlin's opportunity. I don't know if you guys talked about it already, but in the first 15 minutes of the game, if he puts that ball in the back of the net as opposed to kicking it straight into the ground and it going wide and not even putting it on frame, I think it's a completely entirely different game, just based on the defensive side of the game that we've seen out of the squad over the last like 3-4 games. But yeah, for me, long answer of saying no, I'm not like overly concerned. It's just they're a significantly better team. They're the gold standard of Serie A the last like 3-4 years. So I think it's kind of a good level set for us, to be honest, because I think that we could get a little bit caught up in like, hey, we might be like Team of Destiny vibes, like we're playing really, really well. It's like, yeah, we're playing well, but that's how far we have to go.
Yeah, no, I think right. I think the to my question first is like, what was the difference between this and maybe other times where we get punched and can come back up? Is just the quality. Inter is not just the class of Serie A, but I think you can make a real argument that they're the top team in all of Europe, or at least one of the top teams.
Yeah, for sure.
They're denying it. You look at the run that they had just the last couple years, right? I mean, I know Inter fans, as they should, felt hard done in that Champions League final, and
Hmm.
they get knocked out last year to Atletico, which was kind of another one to be pretty upset about when Lautaro misses a pen, and you see kind of the disturbance in the force for him to miss that. So they're an elite team, and elite teams with elite players take advantage of their chances. And even the DiMarco goal is just clean as can be.
Yeah.
You've got to be all class to be able to finish that, and that's probably what we're missing.
But
When it
also
comes to it.
But also when Maros is just standing 10 yards away from where he's
Well,
supposed to be
for
and has a
sure,
wide
it's the
open.
difference in class. Like you've got, but
Yeah,
how often? And my point is that in matches where we've been able to make up or slide by or get away
correct. No,
with,
you're spot on.
it's all of a sudden you can't do that when it's Timarco or Hakan at the end of it. You've got to, and then again when Noslin misses a chance, or in games where Tati has missed chances, we can get away with it because we're
Hmm.
not being killed. And then a Pedro comes in and does his piece, but Inter, it was like everything that we did wrong, Inter did right, and
Mhm.
that just on a night like tonight, you're going to get a 6-0, and it looks way, way worse.
And I like the point Bobby made because it is very important to keep this in sight. This is the start of this Lazio project. We are very much in the first 3 months, 4 months of this project. While Inter have been working and building this up and developing this over the course of the past 3, 4 years. It's still incredible to see where we're at the table. Even competing, even in those initial minutes before the penalty, the game is very even. It's very even regardless. I mean, we look like more of a protagonist. We had some good moments, good flashes, not perfect, but it is important to keep that in mind. Of hey, expectations, of course, keep them in check because hey, we're not even in year one of this rebuild. We're literally 4 months into this rebuild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about being even for a lot of the match. Just running through the stats because right, I look at this as and not really having watched too much of the second half. Like you look at this and go, "What the hell happened?" 6-0. Just looking at the stats, it's 52% possession to Lazio. Lazio with only 0.4 in expected goals. So obviously horrifying on that end, but like we've seen that before. Expected goals for Inter, again, I want to say this is the most we've given up in expected goals, but there was recently another match where we were close to 2, and I told Caleb as kind of an outlier, one of the things we've done really well this season is keeping our opponents under 1, let alone under 2. But this match, 2.27 was expected goals for Inter. For them to walk away with 6 goals is just like maddening. Total shots, Lazio 9 to Inter's 12. Again, not a massive disparity there. Big chances, of course, 5 to Lazio's 1. Big chance misses. Inter did not miss one damn chance. Lazio, their only chance was a missed chance. So, you look at that and like, yes, Inter on paper for sure. No questions about it. But where the hell did the 6 goals to none come from?
And I think even then, because there were some good finishes today from Inter, but even 7 shots and you get 7 shots on target, and you score 6 of them. It like you said, everything just went right. It's
Yeah,
just one of
that's what
those
I mean.
days.
It's just
It's just
like
one
it's
of
one
those
of those
days.
games you just gotta be like, hey, tip your hat. Nothing worked today, and
So
everything
what's
went.
your big positive from this? Because obviously this is, yes, is this, you can throw it away, but I
No,
think something can
for
come out
me,
of
it's
it.
the
What's your
first
big
20
positive?
minutes, dude. For me, it's the first 20 minutes, and we were toe to toe. And for me, I would very much say that we were the ones that were driving the way that we were dictating the way that the game was being played. Inter was trying to press when we had the ball in possession, and we seemed to be fine playing out of it. For me, the first 20 minutes of the game before he was completely overwhelmed, Ravello was an animal in the middle of the park. I think that Zikani had a couple great runs for today. I think that, and I thought that, Hilo was having a good game before he got hurt too. Providel came up with, that big save right before the penalty happened anyway. But for me, it's the first 20, 25 minutes of the game where we genuinely took it to him. And, again, I go back to the Noslin miss. If he knocks that in, that's the culmination. That's the difference of being able to like completely flip how a game, starts versus how a game finishes. Because if you put that in, then all of a sudden, Inter coming off of the result that they had at the weekend, or last week, then they start to get a little bit nervous of, hey, we're losing to a inferior team at the moment. They're playing in a really hard and a sold out Stadio Olimpico. And I think the game changes entirely if he buries that. So for me, that's it, is that for the first 20, 25 minutes, we went toe to toe with him and I think looked like the better side. I mean, Sean, I texted you after we, right at halftime that I thought that we were unlucky to, like, didn't deserve to be 2 goals down, a goal down at that point, certainly, but not 2. So for me, the first 20, 25 minutes is what I'm taking most positive for today. No question about it.
Caleb, what about you? What's your big positive?
I mean, that's it. For me, the real positive thing will be after this game. How do we respond? If we respond well, if we're able to get thrashed 6-0, come back the next game, get a convincing win, that for me is a positive. But that's to be determined. So we'll see.
Here's my positive from this. We've talked about how important this winter window is. And my positive comes in the fact that year over year over year, particularly when we are playing well, Lotito takes a step back and goes, see, we're good. Like, look at the squad that I've built for you. We don't need to do anything. Well, my positive would be that, and I'm probably stupid in hoping for this because it's not going to happen, but I will be stupid and say my hope is that this is not a wake-up call for the players, that they throw this away, they move forward, this isn't who they are. My hope is that Lotito looks at this and goes, we do have a good team, but we're not good enough, and we just lost 2 center backs in one match. We already had Romagnoli out. Now, who knows what happens because Gila, head injury. It's another head injury for Gigot. So we don't know how long we're going to have to be stuck with Patrick and Marusic at center back. And then, what's going to happen with an aging Pedro. Castrovilli is already being reevaluated because he's got pieces in his contract that could see us terminate him. And then we're down another midfielder. So my hope is that we walk away from this. And when I say we, I mean Lotito, and only Lotito says we've got to reinforce this squad because we're there. We're in a position to fight for and be in a Champions League race. So live look at the table. We played 16 matches and we are currently in 5th place, still ahead of Juve, despite this result. When you look at our results this weekend, yes, we lost to Inter. Juve drew a Venezia side. Roma lost to Como. It's not all bad, but I think we are still in a race, and I expect, and maybe this is just being hopeful, but I expect Fiorentina to drop off and to fall off and cool off just a little bit. I don't expect Atalanta to do that. So for me, we're in a race, right? Milan's been incredibly disappointment. So if we don't take advantage of Juve and Milan being down and only having to compete against a Fiorentina, then I think Lotito's lost the plot.
Yeah, I think him looking like he was there, tonight. Like, there's no way that he can look at it objectively. I mean, which we know that Lotito is super objective, historically speaking. But there's no way that he can sit there and look at that, feel good, and be like, you know what? Yeah, Noslin is my guy. That's the striker that we need. Like, God forbid, someone goes down. Who, like, if you're the one that if you are Lotito, like, what positions are you trying to strengthen first? Like, what's your highest priority in January?
It's midfield and then center back. And to me, it hasn't changed at all. We could talk about striker and wanting, but like that to me, we've had 0 issues scoring goals. And while we have been sound defensively from the start, we've been down in bodies for the midfield. And Castrovilli is hurt and unreliable with his injury history. So you have to get a midfielder. You just have to, because you're relying on Rovella and Guendouzi match in and match out. It's going to happen because we've seen it happen before. It can be different players, but the same result. It's going to be, we get to the end of the year, we'll be in a Champions League battle, and it just, the legs and the bottom's going to fall out because we're playing 3 competitions. So it has to be a midfielder. It has to be brought in. And I said, from the start that I didn't like our center back situation because Patrick has been really, really good and serviceable as a backup. And when you need him, he can start some matches. But if you are then relying for long stretches where he is your starting center back, start to have some concerns. Well, now you have Marusic having to be inserted at center back. So I think we have to get somebody that can alleviate that concern. And yeah, look, we're not gonna get both of those, let alone then, adding to a striker position that I don't think we quite need. Like, Noslin has scored goals and he is still young and has to figure some of it out. Same with Tati up and down, but I just think we get goals from other places. If we were an Inter or a club like that, like, yes, bring us in a proven goal scorer. That's just not going to happen in the winter transfer market for Lazio. But those two, Caleb, do you see it any other way?
Yeah, those are priorities. I would love, I saw, today's game, some big difference makers were into this fullbacks, wing backs in this case, DiMarco and Dumfries. Um, and I think the team will benefit too from finally upgrading the right back position. I do think midfield and center back are priorities. Well, for good, we can is serviceable at right back right now. But if we were to go for a bonus player, I would love to see that position upgraded. And it's not likely, but that's the only sort of addition I would make. Is I would love to get to pair Nuno with someone, maybe more defensive minded is fine, but just a more complete player that's defensively sound, that can track players, that's consistent. I think that would go far for this team, and also a player that can maybe combine with whoever's on the right wing side, whether it's Saxon and stuff. Lazzari and Marusic have, to their credit, have been decent this season, haven't been all that bad. They're serviceable, but no midfield center back this winter, 100% needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been serviceable enough at that position. Like, of
Yeah.
course, we can nitpick, but midfielder, center back, and then in the off season, I think Efon here on YouTube says it. Like, we do need to find a scorer. We do need somebody who can season in and out is 15 plus goals, right? Because we've got a lot of creators. We do have a lot more a dynamic athleticism, right? Whether it's Nuno or Zaccagni today had a really nice blistering run, but we don't have somebody that's going to just at the end of the day take advantage of the passes that are coming in. Like, we just don't have it. Even Tati, right? We talk at pod after pod of just like he misses too many chances. He does a lot of really good things, and I still think he has a big part to play overall in the project. But man, if we had a prime Ciro Immobile, all of a sudden it's a very, very different squad. So, but to me, that's not going to be solved. You don't get players like that in the winter when you're Lazio. That's going to fit in their budget. The markup on the winter is always high.
Well, we also signed it technically three strikers. We have Tati, Dia, and Oslin.
Yeah.
For me, I'm looking more for who Zaccagni is amazing on left, but who can provide equal ability and threat like a Zaccagni on that right side.
Yeah, which we don't have. Like, we don't know if we don't have the answer to that question today, and I don't think I would cross out that we don't have that option, right? Isaacson, you see the glimpses, still super young. Noslin, still see some glimpses here and there, still could be a part of that solution. So it's not
or
one
or Dia Tati score, one of them scores 10 goals, or they both do, but from now to the end of the season. Yeah, for sure, it's too early.
Yeah, it's definitely too early. So let's, because we always do, and I want to make sure we at least issue out these two awards. Give me your man of the match for a match that it's probably hard. But give me who was your man of the match, Caleb, for this one.
It was Zaccagni. I think Zaccagni had really good moments. He was one of the more threatening players, one of the more consistent ones today. Didn't really do much wrong. I don't really think much of the attack did much wrong, except maybe Nelson missed that chance. But yeah, for most part, it was good. I just like we have a lot more to talk about when it comes to Bidone, but for me, Zaccagni.
Bobby?
Yeah, I think if it's not him, it's probably Ravella, just because of the way that, again, I'm sticking just to the positive parts of today. In the first half, I thought that he was playing the Regista role perfectly, getting stuck in for tackles, starting to start to counter the other end, um, before it all went up in flames. If I had to pick somebody other than Zaccagni, for me is the clear number one, but if I had to pick somebody else, it'd be Ravella.
Well, then, Bobby, give me your bidon. I'm taking a look at FootMob and looking at the ratings, and there's a whole lot of red and orange, and the only player that was in positive with a 7.3 was Zaccagni. But curious to hear who your bidone was, because it seemed like
it's probably like a little bit hard. I mean, my initial thought is Marusic, because of just how poorly he was how much he just got lost on DeMarco's goal for the second one. If you get in 1-0, whatever, okay, kind of a hard done penalty. It's a difficult one to take, but it is what it is. You give up the second goal 2 minutes before 2 minutes before the half. That's just unforgivable to take. So yeah, for me, it's Marusic.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I just think I think the defense, just Patrick, Tavares, and Marusic, I thought were all really poor today. I mean, just abysmal, like really bad. We're talking amateur mistakes. The goals that they scored weren't because they were these really. They had some nice build up and stuff like that, but it was mostly just really amateur mistakes from guys that have been playing the game for a while. Just really bizarre stuff. But yeah, any of those three get a shout. Some people are going to say Providel, but it's tough. And I
Dude,
don't think
no,
that's
not for today.
I don't not for today. You don't concede 6 goals and it's blame the keep like that's a defenders.
Yeah,
Um but yeah, I mean I'll go Patrick. With Patrick, with the experience he has, he's that sort of next man up. Both him and Marusic. These are guys who are veterans of Lazio. Hill out, Gigo goes out, right? Romagnoli is out. These are the guys who got to step up. It's these two guys, and they both completely failed at that. So mine's Patrick.
Well, I know, Caleb, you and I have talked a lot about Romagnoli, and today it was just another match that's evidence to just the quiet leader he is and how critical he is to this side, and just doesn't always get a ton of praise because what he's doing is not necessarily popping off of the page. And you have a player like Gila sometimes next to him who it's all the blistering runs. It's the things that get you off your seat. But Romagnoli kind of back there, the quiet presence that keeps this side calm, cool, collected, and from conceding 6 goals. So he can't come back soon enough. But look, let's hope we can get back on track because and we can't hope, we have to. We play Lecce on Saturday this weekend. Big one against 14th place Lecce. It is like 3 points or bust without
there could
question.
not be a more bigger defined. This is a must-win game.
It has to be. This has to be
Yeah.
the bounce back, not just for bounce back's sake, and not just because we want to see a mentality, but because looming is Atalanta the week after. So a little bit of pause on Europa right now. So we are fortunate to have that 1 week, one match per week right now for the next few weeks before
Yeah,
Europa League resumes. So it is Lecce, little bit of a break. Let's hope for a bounce back, get that confidence up. Then it's Atalanta and the Derby. So, we don't have to talk about how important the Derby is. The Derby's the Derby. Two big ones. So against Lecce, it's got to be a bounce back. We've got to see this side respond, whether we lose 6 goals, whether we beat Napoli back-to-back matches.